So you want to know how to slay the undead? Well, you've come to the right place. I hope you're ready to learn how to double tap some zombies, wights, and more, because we have quite a fun roster today. So when it comes to actually slaying the undead, it's very important to understand, first of all, what they truly are and where they truly come from before we learn how to hunt them. Undead are typically creatures that form from tortured, vengeful, or other sorts of spirits that still have some sort of work to do here in the world of the living. Some of this work, though, can actually be very noble, such as a spirit that died in battle defending their homeland. However, even good intentions can still be grounds for a spirit to come back and haunt and create a little bit of chaos. Undeath is this very unnatural state, not living, but not quite dead either. And we're here to learn how to fix that. So you see, the most common kinds of undead are usually the small remnants of necrotic energy running around. You've got your garden variety undead fodder such as zombies, skeletons, and the like. As the undead and the forces that create them get a bit angrier, you'll likely encounter creatures like wights, vampire spawn, and much more. And remember, anyone can create basic undead. Animate Dead is a spell in the game that literally lets you take some old bones lying around and make some skeletons or zombies out of them. However, the stronger kind of undead usually point to something much bigger at work. As we get to the much more powerful kinds of undead, we've got things like vampires and various kinds of liches, actually. And mind you, tons of creatures can surprisingly become liches. For example, we have a fun concept such as a Draco-Lich, which is basically like what it sounds. It is a creature that is a lich, but also a dragon too. Regardless, undead creatures can very well cause problems in your campaign all the way from level 1 to 20. But now that we've gotten a bit more of an understanding of what we're dealing with, how can we deal with undead? One of the trickiest parts of undead, surprisingly enough, comes from two different things. First of all, it's their ability to spread. We all know the Hollywood concepts of things like zombies and vampires, and for the most part, this is common with many kinds of undead as well. Lots of undead have the ability to create other undead. Some notable mentions to include here are vampires, shadows, wights, jiangshi, and death tyrants. Because of course, if dealing with one undead wasn't already hard enough to deal with, how about a horde of them? And now, segueing into the second big chunk of the reason why undead can be so hard to deal with, their resilience. And, who knew creatures that close to death would be so dang hardy? Many undead have resistances and even full-on immunities to certain kinds of damage. So it's important to have your character kind of get a clue about which attacks really do or don't seem to be working. And beyond just shrugging off damage, some undead can even regenerate. Not all of them can do it, however, but it's important to note that a good chunk of them still can, though. Sometimes you'll have to keep hammering them again and again and again to make sure that they really are done for. Hence, double tapping. And these abilities that allow them to just regain hit points are either the regeneration ability or their undead fortitude. The big difference between these two is that with regeneration, it works while the creature is at 1 hit point or more, whereas undead fortitude activates while the creature is brought to 0 hit points. And with all this you might be thinking, yeah, so Smiles, undead sound super strong, but it also sounds like just blasting them or bonking them is probably one of the best ways to go about doing it, right? Just hit them really hard and just try to aim for their weaknesses? Yes, mostly. However, we do have a surprising number of options for dealing with undead, specifically in the game. And these, surprisingly enough, come from our individual character options. And so first of all, we have Undying Warlock. And no, I don't actually mean Undead Warlock. And yes, there are 2 different variations of this. I do in fact mean the Undying Warlock. And now this is a very unpopular Warlock subclass, admittedly. Mechanically, its features aren't very helpful and are super situational. However, if you're going to be going into something like a campaign that revolves around hunting and taking down undead, suddenly, this subclass isn't so bad, or at least honestly just the first level of the subclass. So you see, there's one feature within Undying Warlock that is fantastic for building a character that's all about dealing with undead and making it harder for them to deal with you. And that is the Among the Dead feature. While this feature is also supposed to be kind of like the stepping stone to focus on some unique Spare the Dying interactions, this feature is also fantastic for dealing with undead. by making you much harder for them to hit. So the text itself reads, Undead have difficulty harming you. If an undead targets you directly with an attack or a harmful spell, that creature must make a wisdom saving throw against your spell's save DC. And of course, an undead needn't make the save when it includes you in an area effect, such as the explosion of a fireball, whatever. On a failed save, the creature must choose a new target or forfeit targeting someone instead of you, potentially wasting the attack or spell. On a successful save, the creature is immune to this effect for 24 hours, and undead is also immune to this effect for 24 hours if you target it with an attack or harmful spell. What this does is give us something akin to the Sanctuary spell, and personally, I think this ability is great for traveling through countrysides littered with zombies, skeletons, and other fodder undead. They can't hit you, and as long as you don't attack one of those undead specifically, everything stays peaceful. And yes, having it on a creature as long as we don't attack it isn't great. However, there are caveats around this. For example, summoning spells. With abilities like this, you can't be the person causing damage. However, there isn't too much said against you summoning a creature that does your damage for you. Kind of like a Pokemon trainer, you can sit back, summon up some monsters, and have them go to town on hordes of undead. However, these sorts of rulings are still a little bit wonky and aren't exactly 100% kosher at every table. So just make sure, because ultimately, a lot of this stuff is up to the interpretation of your DM. But in regards to my own take, you're summoning a creature that does a specific action. The ruling states that if you personally do anything to the undead, the effect is broken. So just keep that in mind. And honestly, the other caveat too, which I think really makes this a great ability, think about it like this. Let's say, for instance, you want to go and fight a necromancer. They're just throwing all kinds of zombies and undead at you and everything else, and you're horribly outnumbered. You're fighting one dude and his horde of 20 zombies. You can beat up the necromancer as much as you want, and those zombies probably won't be able to hit you, because they won't be able to pass the wisdom save. In addition to that, you can pick off any of the zombies individually, and the other zombies won't be able to hit you, because that's the thing. The effect works on individual targets. It's not sort of like an aggro effect where if you hit a zombie, all the other zombies are like, wait a minute, he hit us, he's not supposed to do that. And then all of them just start ganging up on you and the effect is broken. It's saying individually, when you hit a target, that target then can proceed to hit you. So if there's a specific undead that you guys want to take down and just completely ignore all of the other undead, this is really good for that. So anyways, moving on to another great subclass / class option, we have Paladin. So first of all, we have our Divine Smite. And smiting, of course, lets us hit with radiant energy, which for a decent number of undead is also a big weakness. And even too, something that's very fun about the Paladin's Divine Smite is that it actually says that it does additional damage to undeads and fiends, quite literally letting us slap on an extra 1d8 whenever we go and bonk someone with our smite. In addition, as a Paladin level 1, we get access to our Divine Sense ability. And now what this allows us to do is detect the presence of fiends, celestials, and undead. You can reach out and find undead around you, which can be great for preventing your party from getting jumped. And as we dive into Paladin, we actually have 2 different oaths that we can take that would be perfect for a hunter of undead. First of all, we have Vengeance Paladin, and the reason why is we have our feature, Abjure Enemy, and this ability is super lockdown. We target a creature and have them make a wisdom saving throw, and if they fail, they become frightened of us for a minute, and during that minute, they gain no benefit to their movement speed. This lasts, however, until the target takes any damage, but what's really great about this ability is that when you use it, undead and fiends have disadvantage on the saving throw to resist the effect. Which means that this is great for some big bats like vampires and the like that'll be much more difficult for you and your party to deal with. Leave them stuck in place where your party preps up some big combos or attacks, and then give them the beatdown when you're ready. If they can't reach you, they can't kill you. And in addition to this, Vengeance Paladin also gives you the ability to use your Vow of Enmity feature. You can target one creature, and for that minute, all rolls you make against that target are at advantage. So if you think you're just getting this ability just for taking out dead, then you are dead wrong. And what I like about this too is, let's say you're doing this for, just hunting undead. You can also use this ability to really get a lot of mileage out of crit fishing too. So just keep that in mind. And now, we're presented with a tricky choice here, because Vengeance Paladin, as we've already discussed, is great. However, Oathbreaker is fantastic when it comes to their Channel Divinity feature, Control Undead. And yes, it does what it sounds like. What this lovely little ability does is let us target an undead creature that we can see within 30 feet of ourselves and force it to make a wisdom saving throw. If the creature fails, then you get to command that undead for the next 24 hours, or until you use this version of your Channel Divinity again. This effect fails, however, if the target's CR is equal to or greater than your Paladin level. But yeah, early game, and surprisingly enough, even late game, you'd be surprised with just how many undead have god-awful wisdom and have a CR less than your Paladin level but can still strike hearts into players ridiculously. Imagine, if you will, the scenario. You're a level 4 Paladin who comes across a wight in their gaggle of zombies. Now, this could have been the end of the line for your little party. However, you whip out your Channel Divinity on the wight, get it under your control, and now you gain a mini militia of undead at your control at level 4. And let me tell you, sometimes you gotta fight fire with fire, and being able to get a miniature horde of undead ain't exactly a bad way to go. And now, speaking of fighting fire with fire, I don't think it would be right if we didn't address the elephant in the room over at Necromancer Wizard. The capstone for this lovely subclass gives you the ability to target an undead and force them to make a wisdom saving throw. If they fail, they're under your control until you use this feature again. However, smarter undead are harder to control, and even if you do manage to gain control of it, the real smart ones can even try to break your control over them every hour. But this ability is fantastic on the really, really dumb undead. And you'd be surprised how many undead there are late game that are this stupid. For example, the Nightwalker, which is a CR 20 creature with no bonus to its wisdom saving throws, weighs in as a huge creature with 337 hit points, flies and has an intelligence of 6 and a wisdom of 9. This thing is meant to be the BBEG, but could end up being your pet. Let that sink in. However, if using undead really isn't your thing, you don't really want to fight fire with fire, let's get back to some anti-undead strats then. We have Cleric, of course, with their Turn Undead Channel Divinity, which forces all undead within a 30-foot radius to GTFO. We also, of course, have lots of radiant damage dealing spells, and Undead Vendetta spells such as Hollow, Protection from Evil and Good, Magic Circle, Detect Evil and Good, Dispel Evil and Good, and Temple of the Gods. And the fun part is that the further you go into Cleric, the better your Channel Divinity becomes, eventually becoming the feature Destroy Undead. Starting at 5th level, when an undead fails its saving throw against your Turn Undead feature, the creature is instantly destroyed if it's of a certain challenge rating. Now, with Cleric, we find that this challenge rating never actually goes higher than a CR of 4, but what this ability is great for is taking out tons of low-level fodder. So just be mindful, it probably won't be super effective against the undead BBEG, but even then, forcing an enemy to flee could still give you a lot of room for openings. And if you really wanted to go with some undead animosity, we also have Grave Cleric subclass. And the reason for this is Grave Clerics get Eye of the Grave, which functions very similarly to the Paladin's Divine Sense, in that it lets you know the location of nearby undead. And finally, when it comes to the character options, we have Ghost, Slayer, Blood Hunter. Blood Hunters are a class that are made up of hunters of creatures in the night, and Ghost Slayers excel even more at this with the Rite of the Dawn feature. And thanks to this, whenever you hit an undead with your right, they take an additional Hemocraft die's worth of damage. And yes, while it is an exceptionally powerful feature, it is still one worth mentioning here when it comes to absolutely hating and dunking on undead. But anyways, that's all the time I have today for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please like and subscribe for even more D&D content and ideas. And if you really enjoyed this kind of video, then let me know in the comments and even tell me what sort of creature type you would want me to figure out how to take down next. In the meantime, keep smiling, keep scheming, and I'll see all of you next time.